Good morning, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Hog Hoops Live. I am your host, Curtis Wilkerson. You can find me with the squad Trey Biddy, Danny West, and Andrew Ellis over at HawgSports.com. Anything cool happen with Arkansas basketball lately? Maybe an overtime win and a court storm against the number one team in the country? I don't know. We're going to talk about what was just an electric night in Bud Walton Arena, what it means for the program, for the season. We're going to do a little bit of maybe a before and after on this 9-game winning streak, where the Hogs were, where they are now. We're going to get you all primed up for this weekend's trip to Tuscaloosa, a big game for the Razorbacks. And, of course, we'll get to your questions, all that and more coming your way on Hog Hoops Live. All right, everybody, real quick, as always, I want to remind you of all the ways that you can watch or listen. You know the drill. You can find us on Facebook Live. Be sure to give us a follow there. Also available on YouTube. Hog Hoops Live has its own separate YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe there. If you haven't done so already, you'll get all of these videos uploaded afterwards, as well as any live reactions that we do after the games. We had one for Auburn. I'd suggest going back and checking that one out. It's exciting times. If you're a podcast person, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, the podcast will be right where you find Hog Sports Live with Trey every week. Whew. What a night it was in Bud Walton Arena Tuesday. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because I already have, like I said, go back and check out that live reaction video and podcast. That was fun. But we got to talk about it, right? You know, first of all, does it make any sense at all to anyone listening out there that Auburn in 2022 is the first AP number one ranked team to come into Bud Walton Arena and play Arkansas? It doesn't make any sense to me, really. All these years, all these great teams that have come through the SEC, the great Kentucky teams, Florida won a couple national championships, but Bruce Pearl's squad was the first? That's crazy to me. And Bruce said that was something that he was proud of. Rightfully so. As it turns out, the Tigers are the first number one ranked team to walk into Bud Walton Arena and play Arkansas, and they're also the first to walk out with a loss. But hey, in my opinion, Auburn has nothing to hang their heads about. I mean, that's a terrific team. They really are. A title contender, in my opinion. You know, Walker Kessler is an absolute beast. He flirted with a triple-double. Jabari Smith, he's going to be an NBA All-Star. They're long, athletic, deep, talented. But nobody was walking into that environment and beating the Razorbacks Tuesday night. Nobody. Bud Walton Arena was electric. Record-setting crowd, 20,327 people. Ridiculous. It was overwhelming. My laptop was bouncing all over the place. I couldn't hear myself think. It was the most difficult yet enjoyable game I've ever covered. And I can't imagine being Auburn, trying to focus, trying to get play calls in, trying to communicate on the floor and execute. You know, it was a six-man atmosphere. It really was. That's cliche, but the crowd provided a six-man. When those dudes were at the free throw line, it was nuts. It was an insane asylum in there. Probably contributed to Auburn going 8 of 17 from the stripe. You couldn't hear the whistles from the officials. I mean, it was awesome. I don't think Auburn necessarily did themselves any favors with the crowd by taking a stroll over to the Razorback logo at midcourt and having a dance party on it pregame. And listen, I've coached. I've been around basketball long enough to know a bad look when I see it. And it's one thing to get hyped up before a game, you know, have a dance circle on your end and your paint during warm-ups. Happens all the time. That's part of it. You don't take it to the logo. Not in Bud Walton. Not on that night. I could see it coming, and I'm glad I was able to grab video of it because I knew as soon as they started hopping over there, I was thinking, look, this is a bold move right here. So one way or the other after the game, either this is going to give them validation or they're going to regret doing that. As it turns out, the staff showed the video to the team right before they came back on the floor for tip-off. Arkansas staff, they saw it. So a little added motivation, as if the Razorbacks needed it in a game like this. What an atmosphere. Anytime you have a game of this magnitude, the key things you're looking for from the home team really is how do they start and how do they finish. You'd rather be the home team in that type of environment, obviously, but it's not easy. You don't get off scotch-free. You see all the time in front of a big home crowd like that, teams will get all jacked up, maybe a little bit too much, and then they come out flat. Get behind early, it kind of kills the energy and the momentum in the building. I thought Arkansas did a great job of channeling their emotions and just staying steady throughout. They settled into the game, and Arkansas landed the first punch. Went up 10, went on a 16-2 run, and that set the tone for the rest of the night. When Arkansas did that, you knew Auburn was going to make a run. That's what good teams do. But that set the tone in that building for the rest of the night, and I think at that point, you felt pretty good about Arkansas's chances. The Hogs had to weather a storm there to close out the first half. You had Jalen Williams out for the final 7 minutes, Devo for 5.5, Tony there at the end of the first half. They all had 2 fouls, and Auburn was just gobbling up offensive rebounds without Jay Will in there. It was ridiculous, actually. 11-0 on offensive rebounds alone. In the first half, Auburn was plus 16, I think, at halftime. But Arkansas still goes into the half up 3. The second half, that was crazy. I've never seen anything like it. It was an instant classic, this game. Even if they could have played it on the street somewhere, and the game itself would have still been an instant classic, just back and forth, back and forth. No team led by more than 2 possessions after halftime. 13 ties and 13 lead changes in the second half alone. It was a hell of a game. I remember the timeout. There's 3 minutes and 40 seconds left in regulation. Score was tied 59-59. And, you got to be sitting there going, hey, in a game like this, Arkansas wants to get to that final media timeout with a chance to win the game, with a chance to close it on their home floor. That's what they had. All of a sudden, Wendell Green for Auburn comes out. He gets right to the cup for a layup. He sticks a 3. Auburn goes up 5 with a little over 2 minutes left, and you're going, uh-oh. This ain't good. But Arkansas just flat out refused to lose. I think we overuse the word gritty sometimes, but I don't know how else you describe that performance. Arkansas couldn't make a shot to save their lives, but they were aggressive as could be, getting to the free throw line, drawing contact, getting to the stripe. They dug their heels in. They started getting stops. They made 1 shot from the field the rest of the way, and it was on really a great play by J.D. Ncaa. He drove it. He drew Kessler over, dumped it off to Jalen Williams for a game-tying layup. I think there's about 22 seconds left. That eventually forced overtime, which Auburn had the last shot there in regulation, and Green, who was getting to the rim late, he elected to pull up from 30 feet in a tie game instead of attack the basket. But, your world, man. We'll take it, right? And, overtime was more of the same. Auburn scores first to grasp some momentum, and then J.D. Ncaa comes down and answers with just that nasty step-back 3 over the top of Jabari Smith. That's a big-time shot from Ncaa there. Auburn goes back up 1. Here we go again with this back and forth. And then again, Arkansas can't make a shot to save their lives, but they were relentless on the attack. Razorbacks make 1 shot from the field in overtime, but they go 11 of 14 clutch free throws. That's absurd to fend off Auburn, even though, Jabari Smith canned a couple of 3s there late to keep it interesting. But that was enough for Arkansas to pull that one out. It's kind of crazy, really, if you think about it, that the last, maybe the biggest play of the game didn't count. Devo threw himself a lob and hammered the dunk right there after the buzzer, swung back around his midsection, for a politically correct term, across the face of Wendell Green, who was trying to chase him down or something. And it looked like he was trying to chase him down after the dunk, but it didn't matter because then there was the court storm. And listen, there's so much talk about this leading up to the game, and in the aftermath. I guess I'm kind of obligated to weigh in on it. I really do understand both sides of it. I get, respecting the history and the tradition of the program. Act like you've been there before. Arkansas is the type of program that wants other teams storming the court after beating them. Right? I agree with all that. So I didn't really know how I would feel if they stormed the court, but given the gravity of the moment, the way that game played out with overtime, the exclamation point at the end, it almost felt necessary to me. It felt like it had to happen. And it was awesome. And really, to go along with that, at the end of the day, in my opinion, man, it's all about the players. Regardless of what anyone did in the past, back in the 90s or whenever, this group of Razorbacks has earned the right to be celebrated. They earned that moment that they had last night, didn't they? Or Tuesday night. Think about a guy like Jalen Williams, for example. He helped lead Arkansas to its first Elite Eight in a quarter century last season. Incredible. But with all the nonsense that was going on, he was only able to really relish that in front of crowds of like 4,000 people. If you took a look at his face, though, Tuesday night, you saw how much that meant to him. And then to top it all off, given how Auburn started things in the pregame, I feel like Arkansas deserved to have the last dance on its home floor, right? The Hogs dance on the Hog, not anybody else. Muss loses his shirt. He's running around out there with no shirt on, sling on. It was just an incredible scene. It really was. And so just an absolutely incredible win for the Razorbacks, a special moment. But, what does it mean? And what happens next? So, listen, that's as good of a signature win as you're going to find, which is what everyone was kind of saying Arkansas needed to jump to another level, right? Maybe get back into the polls, get back in, deeper into the conversation. They're on an 8-game winning streak coming into it, but what was going to propel them really back onto that national scene? Well, you beat the number one team in the country who was riding a 19-game winning streak coming in. That's pretty good, right? That's one that's going to carry weight. We talk about these, the net, and I'm going to get into that in a second because it's important, but it's flawed, right? I mean, you think about those quadrant one wins. That's all you hear about. How many do you have? What's your record in quadrant one games? Fair enough. But if you go look at it, winning on the road at Vermont is a quadrant one win. They're a top 75 team in the net. And so on paper, it counts the same as what Arkansas did beating Auburn. But the good thing is the selection committee is not made up of computers, right? And numbers. They use all those things to evaluate these teams, but they're going to be able to look at that and go, oh, that's a quadrant one A++ double standard win right there. That's as good as it gets. Right? So when we see some of these things come out, what did this do for Arkansas's resume? Okay, they jumped to from 37 to 31 in the net. And you're going, well, what the hell? That's a huge win. They only jumped up 6 spots. Well, again, it just factors in as a quad one win at home. But everybody else is seeing that, and I think when we start seeing some of the updated bracketology and things like that, you're going to see Arkansas bumped up a couple seed lines because that was important. But when we talk about the net itself, again, Arkansas moved from 37 to 31. That's a 6-spot jump. It's good, but I'm not going to lie. I expected it to be more. I think most people probably did. And so what does that tell me? Look, unless something like super unforeseen happens, Arkansas loses 5 of 6 again to close the regular season or whatever, like this team's going to the NCAA tournament. They're putting together that body of work. They're going to be over 20 wins. They're one win away from that right now. They're going to be over 500 and in the top half of the SEC, almost independent of what happens the rest of the way. They've got this massive resume win. And the good thing is, I think, that the rest of the schedule outside of this Missouri game next week, it can't hurt them because they're all really tough games. You're not going to take super hits if you drop a game, say, at Tennessee or to Kentucky or whatever. But it can sure help you if you win them, right? So, maybe at this point, again, barring a weird collapse, which I don't think we're going to get with this team, Arkansas is kind of playing for seeding right now. And even after beating Auburn, those damn losses to Hofstra and Vanderbilt continue to haunt them a little bit. And listen, neither one of those are bad teams. They're really not. I mean, you think about Hofstra, this is a team, they took Houston to overtime. They lost a 2-point game to Maryland. They beat Arkansas. Vanderbilt, I think they're 5-6 in SEC play. They're right there in the middle of the pack. They're not the bottom feeder they have been. But again, when you look at these evaluative tools, those are both quad 3 losses. And that's what's holding Arkansas back right now. Arkansas is 8-3 in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 games. And so those 8 wins are more than 13 teams that are ranked ahead of Arkansas in the net. But they have those 2 quad 3 losses. Only Alabama and Marquette have 2 quad 3 losses and are ranked ahead of Arkansas right now. The difference, Arkansas has 2 quad 1 wins, Marquette has 7, Bama has 6. Okay, so you can kind of start to figure out how that works. So what needs to happen? Well, Arkansas still needs to stack on a couple more wins here. Maybe not to get into the tournament, but to be safely away from that 7 to 10 seed range that nobody wants, right? You don't want that. You don't want to win that game and then face the number 1 seed in the second round. I get it. Well, you got 6 quad 1 opportunities left, right? At Alabama, you got Tennessee twice, at Florida, Kentucky, and then LSU at home. So even if Arkansas splits those, I think they're golden, in really good shape, especially if they avoid, taking a loss at Missouri or something next week. And the net's a big evaluative tool, but it's not the only one. The NCAA has these evaluative team, they call them the team sheets, and takes into account a ton of factors, bunch of different factors, but also some different metrics. And if you look at some of the different metrics that are on there, Arkansas is in a pretty good spot. I mean, KenPom has Arkansas at number 22. KPI, Arkansas is at number 22. BPI, Arkansas is at number 22. It's like a common theme there. Strength of record, which is one that the selection committee likes to look at, has Arkansas at 30. That's good, considering it was kind of a light non-conference schedule that's really building up, and there's room for that to grow. The Sagarin ratings have the Hogs at number 21, Torvik at number 19. So Arkansas is in a really good position from that standpoint. The bracket matrix, I talk about that all the time. That should update sometime today. Today is, oh my God, Thursday. Yes, Thursday. Sorry if you're listening later. Lost track of time. But I think that bracket matrix is going to probably update sometime today or tomorrow. But even before taking into account Arkansas's win over Auburn, the Razorbacks were included in 119 out of 120 brackets. Their average seed was an 8.29. That's going to go up, right? And that's a heck of a move from a month ago when all of these numbers were much, much lower. Hogs are in a really good spot in the SEC standings right now. I've maintained really throughout the course of the season, I think if you finish 500 or better in the league this year, you're a tournament team. I think the SEC is that type of league, and you see it. Most of these bracketology projections have 7 or 8 teams listed as in the field right now out of the SEC. Arkansas is 1 win away from doing that already. They're 8-3 in the league. You get to 9 wins, you're guaranteed 500. Tied for 3rd place right now with Tennessee, who you play twice. 1 game behind Kentucky, who you play soon at home, by the way. And then maybe most importantly, the Hogs are 2 full games up on 5th place in the league standings, which that's good, right? Because you want to be in the top 4 because that gives you that double bye going into Tampa for the SEC tournament. So I like where Arkansas is at right now. Next up is a road trip to Tuscaloosa this weekend to take on Nate Oates and Alabama. And usually I'll do Hog Hoops Live the day after a midweek game, right? You guys know that. I skipped a day this week for 2 reasons. One, because I feel like we need to do a live reaction video after beating the number 1 team in the country, right? So I did that. I didn't want to turn around 12 hours later and do a Hog Hoops Live show. So I wanted to give it a day in between, but I also wanted to watch Alabama last night Just so I could speak about them more intelligently, the next day they played Ole Miss Wednesday night, beat up on them pretty good on the road. But it was almost pointless to watch that game because there is no team, I guess, more difficult to figure out in the country than Alabama. They're 15-9 overall. They're 5-6 in the SEC. That sounds like a bubble team on the surface, right? But they're not. They're in. They rank higher than Arkansas in a lot of the metrics, and a lot of that's what we talked about a little bit ago. Some of the wins that they have. I mean, I think it's safe to say that Alabama is probably the best 9-loss team in the country, right? They're also very much a Jekyll and Hyde type of group. I mean, this is a team that has wins over Gonzaga, Houston, Baylor. That's 3 of last year's Final Four, by the way. Beat Tennessee, beat LSU. So really some great wins on the resume. But you look on the flip side, they've lost to Iona, Memphis, Davidson, Mississippi State, Georgia, Missouri. Quite a few head scratchers built in there. And part of that is they're the kind of team that plays to the atmosphere and the level of its opponent. No question, Alabama's extremely talented. Much better team at home, though. They're 14-2 at home. The only 2 losses have been to Auburn and Kentucky, who, interestingly enough, are the 2 teams right now ranked ahead of Arkansas in the SEC standings. We also know Nate Oates will have those guys firing up threes like crazy. And if they're hot, they can beat anybody in the country. They've proven that with Shackelford, Quinterly, J.D. Davison in the backcourt. The problem for them this season at times has been they keep letting it fly, but they haven't shot it well at all consistently. Alabama's shooting 31.5% as a team from 3. That's number 282 nationally. That's not what we expect from an Alabama team, right? But we talk about streaky. So much has been made of Arkansas's lack of three-point shooting this season. Alabama was actually below Arkansas in three-point percentage going into last night's game against Ole Miss. They're ahead of them now because they hit 14 of 22 in Oxford and beat the crap out of the Rebels. So again, Bama's capable, they're dangerous, they're not consistent. And, the other thing that stood out to me about Alabama this year is they don't defend at the same level that they did last year with Herb Jones, John Petty, Bruner, all those guys. Now, they'll still get after you, especially when they get on a run, if the crowd is engaged and they feed off that. But this is a top 25 defensive team last season. Right now, they rank 74th nationally, according to KenPom. So you can score it on them. So at the end of the day with this game, I think it does come down to a couple of things on Saturday. One, can the defense travel for Arkansas? Can you contain those guards for Alabama? Again, if they hit 14 threes against Arkansas like they did the other night, it's going to be a long day. It just is. Can Arkansas avoid, secondly, can Arkansas avoid that natural letdown that you see from teams after huge wins like Arkansas had? Listen, Tuesday, that was emotionally and physically draining, right? I was just there. I talk about it. I write about it. I'm still worn out. And I can't imagine how those guys are feeling, right? Not to mention it was an overtime game on top of everything else. So, with that being said, though, I think it helps a lot that the game was on a Tuesday. For Arkansas, it gives the Hogs kind of that extra day to, a built-in time to rest up, recover a little bit, and sort of turn that page without losing any real prep time because Alabama played on Wednesday, right? So you had that built-in extra day. I think that's a good thing. I also think it helps that this team has really been just laser-focused and locked in, especially during this recent winning streak. They've really had tunnel vision, and I think they're going to be aware of what they need to do to get ready to play. I know Musselman's been really pleased with the way that this has kind of become a player-led group, so you would hope that carries over in a big win just like it does any other win, or if eventually this winning streak ends and Arkansas takes a loss, that they can flip the page and move on from that and just kind of keep that same steady approach. Believe it or not, I actually like that this is a road game and that it's against a good team like Alabama. I think I'd be more concerned about that letdown factor if this upcoming game against Missouri was this weekend instead of a trip to Alabama. I don't think there should really be any issues getting up to play the Tide. I'd imagine they'll have a nice crowd with some good energy in the building. That helps. And lastly, I think that this is a good thing for Arkansas that it's an 11 a.m. game. Especially as the road team, you aren't sitting around the hotel just laying around all day. Right? You wake up, grab breakfast, go play. Bama fans aren't going to have a chance to get all lathered up. I think that's advantage Arkansas. But it really comes down to whether or not they can stop them from hitting a bunch of threes. Right? So we'll see how it all plays out. Okay. I do want to get to some questions. Looks like we have quite a bit of comments. I want to hop on and answer a few from the Razor's Edge message board first. We talked to Stanley Amude and Eric Musselman in a little while today, so looking forward to that. Let's pull this up. Okay. HogFan42069 asked, what will the likely matchups be for this game? Arkansas's length and size should help us in this one, as their guards are smaller. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Thinking about Alabama's starters, I'd probably go with J.D. Note on Quinterly. I think that's a pretty good matchup. I'd like to see Audice Toney on Shackelford. Shackelford's probably the bigger of the guards, 6'3" or so. I think Toney's done a nice job of using his length and strength and athleticism on smaller guards. I think it's frustrated him. So I'd like to see Toney on Shackelford some there. You could probably go either way with Stanley Amude or Trey Wade between Keon Ellis and Juwan Gary. I think you could go either way with that matchup, and they will because they switch a bunch of the screens anyway, right? And then Jalen Williams on Bediako, the freshman center there for Bama. I do think what'll be more interesting is when Bama goes with that three-guard lineup, when they bring in J.D. Davison, the five-star freshman. We'll probably see Arkansas add an extra guard there. Probably Devo. I thought he played great against Auburn, by the way. It was really nice to see that. Is going to play a big role against Alabama. You could probably see that JD, Devo, Chris Likes backcourt for stretches as well when Alabama's going small with their guards. So, yeah, I think those matchups are going to be important. I like putting a little bit of size on a guy like Shackelford, but I do think that we'll see more multi-guard lineups out of the Razorbacks maybe than we have in some of these games during the winning streak. Razorback fan from KC asks if J.D. Note has a chance for SEC Player of the Year. That's a fantastic question. Honestly, I think it probably winds up going to Walker Kessler or Jabari Smith from Auburn or Oscar Tshiebwe from Kentucky, who we'll see in a couple weeks. But, I mean, JD's got to be heavily considered at this point, doesn't he? I mean, he's the best player on one of the best teams in the conference. He leads the league in scoring. He leads the league in steals. He just put 28 on the number one team in the country. I mean, he's having an incredible season. He scored at least 15 points in all but one SEC game. He's averaging over 20 points per game in league play. Right now he has to be one of the top 3 or 4 guys on that short list for SEC Player of the Year with an opportunity to move up because Arkansas's got a lot of big challenges coming up. Regardless of that, first team All-SEC guy for sure, no question. If he's not, I can't wait to write a story about Musselman's reaction from it because he's been phenomenal. Maybe one of the better two-way guards in the country. Hogslap 2011 asks, can Arkansas keep Bama under 35% from three? We kind of talked about that. I mean, that's a key, right? You'd think so. Arkansas is holding SEC opponents to about 30% shooting from three. Remember how bad it was early in the year, but in SEC play, 30%. Bama's shooting 31.5 overall, but we saw last night and have seen before that this year's Alabama team can go crazy on any given night. So that's a huge key to the game for Arkansas to contest those, maybe run those guys off the line. And listen, they're athletic group, and they can put it on the deck, and they can go finish inside. But I think you'd rather them try their luck against a Jalen Williams inside as opposed to letting them shoot threes. And it's not – the thing about Alabama is they're not a huge catch-and-shoot three type of team. I mean, when they're driving and kicking, they're good. But those guys like Quinterly and Shackelford and Davison, they're kind of like J.D. Notae, where they like to cross you up, eye you up, step back, and pull those off the dribble, which is another reason why I like Arkansas's size in that starting lineup. You got a bunch of 6'6" guys out there who can maybe discourage that and harass it a little bit better. Arnold Ziffel asks, what can KK, Chance, and Connor expect the rest of this season with all the star recruits coming in? Transfer portal must also have to add some height. I mean, that's really up to those three guys. They can be content with their current role, which is valuable for this team right now in practice. I mean, it is what it is, in terms of playing time in games right now. I hope that they're all taking the Trey Wade approach, right? Keep grinding, staying ready, and when their number is called, take full advantage of that and never look back. There's going to be a game at some point this season, whether it's, knock on wood, injury, super foul trouble, whatever, where, one of those guys is going to be called on, and they're going to have to be ready to come in there and play. And it's not easy when you haven't been playing, especially with the magnitude of the games that are coming up. That's just part of the drill. As for the future, look, those guys are going to do what's best for them. I'd like to see them all stay. Obviously, I could understand why they may be tempted to go and look elsewhere. As far as the recruits coming in, I don't know that impacts it a lot. You got to remember, Arkansas is also going to lose several guys off the roster anyway, independent of transfer portal or anything like that. Like, guys just run out of eligibility, and the ones coming in naturally kind of slide into those spots. I think, Nick Smith, Jordan Walsh, those are plug-and-play guys that are ready to roll. Darian Ford could help early. Pinion and Dunning might need a little seasoning before they're really taken off. And then to the last part of that, I agree, and I have reason to believe Arkansas is going to be active looking for size in the transfer portal. STL Razor says, I know it's early, but any comprehensive updates on where we stand with the 2023 recruiting class would be fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's still kind of early. It is starting to take shape a little bit. What's been interesting to me about this 23 class, Arkansas is kind of hanging out in Gucci Row with the Blue Bloods for, they're going after some of the best, as they should, right? The thing, in basketball, a lot of these kids, the elite players, they do keep it super close to the vest. So not as many of those long, text chains and conversations with some guys like maybe last year, but more feedback coming from coaches, parents, trainers, things of that nature. So it's been interesting. When we'll really start to get a great idea is in the spring and summer when we see, where's the coaching staff spending their time? Who are they prioritizing? Who's getting to campus for visits? But to answer your question, right now, probably the first two names that jump out to me in terms of backcourt guys would be Jeremiah Johnson and Layden Blocker. Two top 50 guys, explosive guards, teammates, interestingly enough, already on Brad Beal Elite. I think Arkansas is in a pretty good spot with both of those guys. Layden, he'll actually be in town for the Kentucky game, taking an unofficial visit, so that's huge for Arkansas. Layden Blocker is a guy, an Arkansas native, who's playing for the number one prep school in the country at Sunrise Christian. Interestingly, Friday they play Jordan Walsh in Link Academy. So that'll be fun. But he'll be in town on the 26th for the Kentucky game. You got to think he'll come away impressed with that. I'll be looking forward to catch up with him. Jeremiah Johnson's a guy that's been on campus 2 or 3 times now. He was at the Texas A&M game. I don't remember. The West Virginia game, actually, is when he was there. Talked to him. He's excited. Arkansas is near the top of his list. Other perimeter guys, just spitballing off the top of my head. Wesley Yates, Chris Johnson, two Texas guys, probably worth knowing those names. And then I've been impressed with the emphasis on length and size for Arkansas so far as they kind of look at the 2023 class. Just offered Brandon Garrison yesterday out of Oklahoma, big 6'9" prospect, solid 4-star. He actually visited for the Little Rock game. Really like him. Arkansas had Omaha Ballou on campus. Interesting guy, 5-star, top 10 talent. He plays with Jordan Walsh at Link. Was teammates in the past with Luke Haas, one of the new football commits. His whole team, Coach Perry at Link Academy brought the whole team to the Mississippi State game. I'm pretty sure they were supposed to play, but we had all that winter weather, and they were free and showed up. The full squad was right in front of press row, and so that was cool. I'm told Omaha really enjoyed that experience. I've heard through the grapevine that he's going to be probably trimming his list down here pretty soon. I think Iowa State probably somewhere near the top of that. But from there, in any interview you see with him, the schools that he most frequently mentions, Arkansas, Oregon, Kansas. So we'll see where Arkansas winds up there. He's indicated in the past that he would like to take an actual visit. They were just there attending the game last weekend, but an actual visit, unofficial, official, whatever. Hope that happens. I think he's a special talent. Osiris Grady is a 6'9" 4-star out of the Vegas area. Arkansas likes him. He got to take an unofficial recently. And then there's some big fish out there. You think about a couple guys out in Colorado, 6'10" plus 5-star type guys like Bay Fall and Hussein Diop, and Arkansas is all over those guys. So, Taylor Bowen, a guy that's 6'9", kind of a guard. He's kind of that. I don't know if Jabari Smith's a good comparison or not, but a tall, long 6'9" guy who can play inside out. Arkansas has been involved there, so just a ton of guys. So I'm really looking forward to the spring and summer and seeing who they zero in on and just how many they're looking to bring in. I didn't expect Arkansas to bring in 5 guys out of the high school ranks for the 2022 class, but they did. That surprised me. Musselman's talked about how he feels like some of the transfers might be over-recruited a little bit. We're still going to see a blend there, I think, but I wonder if he looks to bring in 3, 4, or even more guys out of the high school ranks, especially on a year where Blocker's really the main in-state guy in that 2023 class for now. I think it's easier to take a bunch more guys when you got a bunch in your backyard like Pinion and Ford and Nick Smith. So I don't know. We'll see. All right, one last one here, and then I'll move over to the chat. Remember, if I didn't get to you here, Razor's Edge folks, double back to the message board later on, and I'll be sure to get in there and answer the rest, probably after the press conference. Eric Musselman, 18, says, based on the level of improvement and comparing the Hogs to other top-tier teams, how far do you think this team can reasonably advance in the NCAA tournament? Well, Coach Muss, appreciate you listening. You guys are going to win the whole damn thing, right? No, in all seriousness, I still think that kind of remains to be seen with this team. To me, Arkansas has now proven that they're a tournament team, no question. I love how they stack up defensively. It feels like they can carry that and make life uncomfortable for just about anyone they can play. If they can suffocate Auburn the way they did, and I know that the crowd played into that some, but, you still got to be out on the floor playing, right? You hold them under 40% shooting, force them into 19 turnovers. If that kind of defense can travel, I think that can win you a game in the NCAA tournament. I really do. When you look at those teams that get to the second weekend or beyond, what's usually the DNA? Usually you see a star player, a stud forward, and really multiple guys in the backcourt who can make plays. And so right now, Arkansas, I think you have a star in J.D. Ncaa. I think you got your stud big in Jalen Williams. And so the question to me, and listen, I love the other guys, the role guys, the Aldis Tonys, the Trey Wades, the Stanley Mudes. Stanley now, listen, he's the kind of guy that can win you an NCAA tournament game too if he pops off like he did at Georgia. He's that kind of scorer. So that's something to keep an eye on too. But really for me, it's, do Chris Likes and Devo Davis continue to emerge and start playing their best basketball? I think that could make the biggest difference for this team in terms of what they're capable of doing once they get into the tournament. Say what you want about Chris, but the dude can change a game when he's on. And I think he's been doing a really nice job lately of kind of corralling that over-dribbling. He's got his head on the swivel more. He's looking to distribute more. Took some questionable ones against Auburn, but his shot selection is getting better, and he's just playing with more confidence, and he's being aggressive and pesky, and he's gone from a liability to making some pretty important plays for Arkansas on the defensive end of the floor. That's going to be key. He's definitely a guy that can create his own shot, and you need that in tournament play because other teams are going to be able to lock down defensively too, right? And then with Devo, we've already seen it from him in March Madness. The best basketball he's played in his career came on the biggest stage, in my opinion. And like I said, I thought he looked great against Auburn. I really hope that carries over. He had that swagger back a little bit, and what I really like to see is he was back to that NCAA tournament Mac McClung lock you down defensive stuff, right? 5 steals. That's really good. That's a good sign for Arkansas. And so I think if those two guys can hit their full stride, that Arkansas could be a team that gets to the second weekend with this group. All right, let me jump over to this chat. See what we got. Scroll up here. David McDaniel says, Woo Pig Suey, how about them Hogs? I agree. Good times. 9 in a row, you take that. Like I said, even way back when this streak first started, I look forward to this show a heck of a lot more when Arkansas is winning as opposed to after they lose to Vanderbilt. It looks like you guys do too, so that's good. Sherry Carter is listening. Says, Woo Pig Suey, fun times. Appreciate you listening in. I agree. Landon Montgomery says, Devo looks back. We need clutch Devo in March. Yeah, I mean, we just talked about that. He really did. You never know what's going on with a guy. If they're sick, a little banged up, struggling with confidence, or, maybe has, stuff going on behind the scenes. You never know what's going on with someone at home or whatever. And I'm not insinuating anything with Devo. I'm just saying you don't know. But he certainly has not been himself, weirdly, as Arkansas has turned the season around. But you started to see signs of it here and there, in the last week or two. And then again, that Auburn game, the biggest game of the year, boy, he looked like himself. He really did. And that's exciting, especially if he's coming off the bench. The spark that can provide, the lift that can provide, that's huge. And when you think about a guy like J.D. Note, we've talked about everything he does. Well, there's a lot of pressure on him to play 40 minutes a game, to be the primary ball handler, the scorer, the top perimeter defender, the point guard. A guy like Devo can take a lot of that pressure off of him, and that's going to make JD better, and it's going to make the team better. So I agree. I really hope he plays well, win or lose against Alabama. If Devo has another solid game, I'm feeling really good about the direction that Arkansas is headed. And also, win or lose against Alabama, I think Arkansas needs to be ranked in the top 25 on Monday. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Marquise Martin says, why isn't Connor Vanover playing? Well, he hasn't even been practicing for a while. He was sick, and he didn't travel to one game. He didn't dress for one home game. Non-COVID related, as we're told, but he was sick and missed a lot of practice, and he's just kind of getting back into the swing of things. So that's part of it. And then the other part of it, too, is you just got that core group of 8 right now who are playing so well for you. And, he's not in that mix right now, but he's got to be ready. Like we talked about earlier, you got to be ready if that opportunity comes, because if, again, knock on wood, you lose Jalen Williams for any period of time, whether it's, foul trouble or you get sick or who the hell knows, you're going to need some help in there. And, I think Kamani Johnson's doing a great – man, his energy is just incredible. he's a bull in a china shop in there, right? So, he's a guy that if all of a sudden you got to rely on him for heavy minutes, you worry about things like foul trouble. So Connor needs to stay ready, and hopefully he's healthy now and getting back in the swing of things. He's an experienced player. He started a lot of games at Arkansas, and seems like the kind of guy that would be able to get in there and help him if his name is called. Dustin Hoofman says they couldn't even hear a whistle on the court. It was so loud. Yeah, it was crazy. There were some times where, if the players didn't stop moving, I would have had no idea that there was a foul or something called. I mean, it was deafening. It really was. And it impacted Auburn. They went to that zone defense for a while, and that's fine, and it probably could have been a good look for them, but so much about a zone defense is communication and calling cutters. And I got here, and just you can't do that when there's 20,000 people screaming like crazy folks. You just can't. So they got out of that. Daniel and Jill Waters says, man, what a night. The Bama game is really going to test us. I agree. It really is. And listen, if Arkansas goes down, if they go down to Tuscaloosa and lose, I wouldn't put much stock into that. I wouldn't worry about that too much. I mean, again, it's a Bama team that's capable. It's a tough turnaround after an emotional game. Like the recipe's kind of there, for Arkansas to drop one maybe. But look, if they go down there and dig their heels in and play the way that they have and get out of Tuscaloosa with the win and run the streak to 10, they're rolling. You won't be able to contain Arkansas Twitter if that happens. Hope it does. Dustin Hoofman says Bruce Pearl even said that the crowd noise made it difficult to call plays. Yeah, and Auburn has an awesome home court advantage themselves. They really do. Their student section is nuts. The difference at Bud Walton Arena is it just holds twice as many people as a lot of these buildings do. There's just a difference in, even though a small arena like Auburn's that holds 10,000 or whatever, there's nowhere for that noise to go, so it gets really loud. You can't replicate what 20,000 people sound like. You just can't. David McDaniel says, well, that's just Auburn. They're very disrespectfully dumb. You must be talking about dancing on the logo. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that. It reminded me of when I was coaching small college ball, and we actually traveled on the road when I was at Lindenwood. We went to Philander Smith. A lot of you probably know Philander Smith in Little Rock, Ncaa school. And we went in there, and I remember during warm-ups that they were, there's music playing and everything like that, and they kind of got their little dance circle going, whatever. It's just part of it. But they trickled it not to half court, it's their own court, but not to half court, but all the way over into our warm-ups. And it pissed a lot of our guys off. And I remember I'd never seen anything like it. And at any rate, we talked about it before the game, and I think it served as the motivation that we needed. We won that game. But there are just certain things that you do and certain things that you don't do. And listen, you should be confident if you're the number one team anywhere, but don't dance on the hog, man. What are you doing? Daniel and Joe Walter says that was definitely some BS. They thought they were going to hang 20 on us. Shows Auburn's class or lack thereof. Yeah, and I wonder if they even understood what they were doing when they did it. Now, I mean, they made a concerted effort to go out to the middle of the floor and dance on the logo, but I don't know if they've really thought about the ramifications there. Jason L. Downing says, hell of a win. Yes, it was. Biggest win in college basketball this year. Dustin Hoofman says that 3 by Note in overtime reminded me of the Scotty Thurman, the 94 championship game. That was a big-time shot. I mean, there was a buzz that, first of all, the hog call before overtime gave me chills. That was an awesome moment. But then Auburn gets the first bucket in overtime, and it felt like a little bit of a letdown. And JD had struggled a little bit, from the field. He got to the free throw line 14 times, which is great. But when he pulled that step back over the 6'10 guy, Man, that was a big time shot. It's kind of a defining moment for a guy like that. Unbelievable. Dave McDaniel says the students just couldn't stand it. They had to storm. Yeah, and another thing I'll say about that, I know I talked about it earlier. Like I just don't think that needs to be planned. Like, oh, if Arkansas beats so and so, we're gonna storm the floor. It's got to happen organically, right? Like it has to be the right opponent, but it also has to be the right kind of moment. I felt like that was the right kind of moment, and it was interesting. Arkansas got that lead in overtime, and then Walker Kessler picked up his 5th foul with a little over a minute left, and next thing I know, all the students are just piling into the stairway leading down towards the floor. And it was just like the pressure of the building was getting ready to release on the court. It was really cool. Really cool. The whiteout work too, I thought that was awesome. Yeah, and so just looking at a comment here from Daniel and Jill, said, I mean, if we win by 10 in regulation, you probably don't storm, but in a win in overtime, it had to happen. Exactly. Landon Montgomery says, how does this team compare to last year's team? Sounds like the chemistry is all coming together. Love this team. There are some similarities just in terms of kind of the toughness that this team plays with and the way that they're defending now. Different in the sense of I thought last year's team shot it quite a bit better. I thought last year's team was just better overall offensively from an efficiency standpoint. Now, there's still time for Arkansas, this year's group of Razorbacks, to get there. There's just something about this group, the grit that they play with, even in a team that was as special as last year's was, that this one feels a little bit different. I wonder how far it can carry them. Wes Glass says, seems like Chris Likes went a little backwards against Auburn. Yeah, yes and no. Like I said, I feel like he took a few ill-advised shots there, but part of that is Auburn's just, I mean, they're the best shot blocking team in the country. So when you're not getting as many looks inside, they're kind of hammering you a little bit in the paint. You're going to have to take some of those. And so I guess, JD could have taken 30 shots or Chris could have taken a few. But yeah, a few of those were ill-advised, but I thought he was great defensively. He's a foot and a half shorter than anyone on the court, and he grabbed 4 rebounds, which was good. I like that he was able to handle the ball without turning it over, which is a big thing. And then, he didn't play the last 8 minutes of regulation, and then he gets subbed in with about 30 seconds left in overtime. In that moment, ice cold, gets himself open on a press breaker, draws a foul, goes up to the free throw line, and knocks down both. That's clutch, and that's a good sign. So, yes, definitely still a work in progress, with shot selection, things like that. But he's still a completely different player than he was even 2 weeks ago, which is good for Arkansas. Sherry Carter says, agreed, 11 o'clock tip is good for the Hogs. Yeah, I think that definitely helps the road team here. Michael James says, why still no KK? I would like to see him get a chance. I just don't think you can mess with the rotation right now. Especially if Devo and Chris are starting to figure it out. I mean, whose minutes is he going to take? And I've said a million times, I love KK, and I want it to work out for him. I think he could have a great career. But man, when you're on a 9-game winning streak, you just knocked off the number 1 team in the country. I don't know that I'd be messing with the rotation much unless I just had to, personally. Tim Eskew says, anyone with a brain knows Alabama's a tough matchup at their place, but their record's deceiving. Have played 12 quad 1 games. We've played 5. They've had a brutally tough schedule, just some odd losses on the road and at neutral venues. Yeah, we talked about all that. They've got some great wins, head-scratching losses. Mostly they've been really solid at home. Josh Wilbanks says, what's the deal with Vanover? We touched on that. Dustin Hoofman, Chris Likes is as much of a free throw guarantee as you can get in the clutch. Yeah, we just spoke to that one, but that was, those were a couple big ones that he knocked down there. And, really, for a guy like Chris, you think about a couple of these other games where he's missed some key free throws. That Vanderbilt game You think about it, as good as Chris was at the beginning of the season in Kansas City, he probably won Arkansas both of those games by what he did late at the free throw line. But he's missing those against Vanderbilt. There's another game in there too somewhere where he missed a couple, and it really hurt the team. But good to see his confidence back. It really is. Something to be said for having multiple guys that you can rely on to go knock down free throws in clutch moments. And I thought Arkansas had 5 dudes on the floor that you felt pretty good about in those moments. Kate Alexander says, if Kentucky comes into Bud Walton as number 1 and we beat them, will we storm the court again? Otherwise, how long do you think we will wait till we see another court storm? That's crazy because I don't think I would. I don't know. I don't think you would. And it seems like you would, like it makes more sense to storm the floor after beating Kentucky than it does an Auburn. But yeah, do you do it twice in a month? I don't know about that one. Maybe it depends on the game situation again. If it's overtime again or a buzzer beater or something, maybe, but. And then also at that point, where is Arkansas? You don't know. I mean, they've got some tough games before then. Maybe they drop off a little bit. Maybe Arkansas is ranked in the top 20 at that point, in which case I don't think you do. But that's a great question. I wonder what they're going to do with that. Let's see. Thomas Patrick Ryan says, have we heard comments from Pearl? Yeah, he was very complimentary of the crowd. That's for sure. He felt like his team maybe needed a loss. And they had not been playing. Listen, they were 7-0 on the road coming in. So I understand what I'm saying here, but they hadn't been playing as well on the road. They had a scare at Missouri, a scare at Georgia. And sometimes you need to take a loss to kind of humble you, reset you a little bit, especially when you're on a streak like they were. So I think that it's actually going to turn out to be a good thing for Auburn, but it's certainly a better thing for Arkansas, right? Reggie Allen says, based on the incoming class, will KK transfer? Yeah, I talked about that. I don't know. I hope not. I hope he stays. But if a guy's not playing where he's at, I mean, that's what the transfer portal is for. If he feels like he can find better opportunities elsewhere, not just him, anyone, they're well within their rights to explore those options. But I hope he stays. I think he's an Arkansas guy, great kid, and I think he's just an incredibly talented player. I'd love to see what he would be capable of doing with just a full, healthy off season, of not getting behind and really being able to take his game to another level. But, we'll see what happens with all those guys. You never know. There's always a surprise or two. Josh Wilbanks says, Arkansas is going to be hard to beat anywhere if we play 40 minutes of hell. Agreed. So far, it's traveled pretty well. 3 in a row on the road. Chance to make it 4 on Saturday. Bijan Timjani, I definitely brutalized that. I apologize. It says when you get to a certain level of maturity as a team, consistency follows. Does look like we're at that level or very close to it. I think the Hogs will do well. Yeah, it's one thing Muss has mentioned. He even talked about getting into overtime in that game and how there were a lot of different voices in the huddle. And it was guys suggesting, tweaks or adjustments or run this play or this matchup, as opposed to earlier in the year when Musselman's voice was the only one. And you hear it all the time, but the best teams are player-led, and I think that's what we're starting to see with the Razorbacks. I agree. It's huge. It really is. Philip Warren says, what do you think is the highest seed we could get in the NCAA tournament at this point? I got that question on the message boards probably a week ago, and I ran the simulator on barttorvik.com, which is an incredible analytics site. And if Arkansas swept the rest of the regular season and won the SEC tournament with additional wins over Auburn and Kentucky, it had them as the highest 3 seed. So I don't know if they can get up to a number 1 or anything like that, but realistically, I think you got to be pretty happy with this group if they win enough here, like we mentioned earlier, to get out of that 7 to 10 seed range. That way you avoid the 1 or the 2 if you make it to the second round. So I think if Arkansas gets anywhere from that 5 to 6 seed range, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. And they can do that. Dustin Hoofman says, I have to give respect to Hunter Yurachek for all his hires to our sports programs. Yeah. I also have to give respect to Hunter Yurachek for not being pissed off that Arkansas got fined $250,000 for storming the floor. After already taking a fine for doing the field storm against Texas. But, I loved it when he kind of tweeted out the picture of each of those and just put priceless. That was pretty cool. Hunter Yurachek gets it. And he's a competitive dude too. And I just like, oftentimes a team is a reflection of its coach and the players take on the personality of their coach. Coaching staffs tend to take on the personality of their athletic directors. Like there's no secret behind why certain people were hired and why there are fits that work and fits that don't. And he's just doing an incredible job. Marcus Holmes says, I think they knew exactly what they were doing when they danced on the Hog. They just wanted to test our manhood and it came back to bite them with a loss. Yeah, it did. It definitely did. It's what kind of made that Devo dunk at the end just a little bit sweeter, didn't it? All right. Gone about an hour. That's probably the perfect amount of time. And like I said, we got the press conference here in a little bit. So I think that's a good time to wrap it up. Really a fun show today. I appreciate everybody's comments and everybody listening in. Look, I mean, it's just a fun time to be following Arkansas basketball right now, whether it's this team, the future with recruiting, and even things that are coming up, throughout the course of the rest of this season. Next up is Alabama on Saturday. Get up early, get your Bloody Marys, mimosas in. It's a brunch time start, right? 11 o'clock in Tuscaloosa. Should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. Arkansas then plays Missouri. I believe that game is on Tuesday, which means this show will be back on the air on Wednesday. Looking forward to that. Again, this has been Curtis Wilkerson with HawgSports. Appreciate you guys listening in, and we'll talk to you next time.